The school bell rang, and children rushed out of their classrooms, laughing and shouting. It was lunch break. The cafeteria filled with noise as students lined up to buy snacks, opened their tiffin boxes, and shared food with friends. Miss Anaya, a new teacher in the school, stood near the entrance of the cafeteria. She was young, kind, and always watched her students closely. It was only her second month at the school, but she had already noticed many things. One of those things was a quiet boy named Zaid. Zaid was always alone. He never talked much, never smiled, and never played with the other kids. He sat in the corner every day during lunch and stared at his desk or out the window. Miss Anaya had asked other teachers about him. They only said, "He's shy, he doesn't cause trouble." But that answer didn't feel right to her. Today, as the lunch break started, she noticed something unusual again. Zaid sat in the far corner of the cafeteria, away from everyone. He placed his lunchbox on the table but didn't open it. Instead, he kept looking at his backpack, which he had placed carefully beside him on the bench. He looked nervous. He glanced around again and again, as if afraid someone might come close. His hands rested gently on his bag, like he was guarding it. Then, slowly, he touched his stomach, like he was hungry but still didn't eat. Miss Anaya walked toward him with gentle steps. She didn't want to scare him. "Zaid," she said softly. He looked up, startled, as if caught doing something wrong. "Why aren't you eating beta?" she asked with a kind smile. He lowered his eyes and whispered, "I'm not hungry." Miss, she sat down across from him. "That's okay, but lunch is important. You'll get weak if you don't eat." He didn't reply. Instead, his small fingers clutched the zip of his backpack tightly. Miss Anaya noticed the tension in his eyes, the slight shake in his hands. Something wasn't right. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly, but it was clear he was lying. Then, after a long pause, he looked up. His lips moved slowly. "Miss, please don't tell anyone." She leaned in. "Tell me what, Zaid?" He reached down and pulled his backpack closer, carefully. He opened the zip only halfway, and turned it toward her. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Inside the bag, there was a small bundle wrapped in a towel. Then, from inside that towel, something moved. A tiny sound came soft, almost like a kitten's cry. Miss Anaya gasped and leaned forward. Inside the backpack was a baby. She looked at Zaid in shock. "What is this? Who is this?" Zaid looked down, ashamed. "My sister, please don't take her away." For a moment, Miss Anaya couldn't speak. She felt like the ground had disappeared under her feet. A baby in a school backpack. Miss Anaya gently reached into the bag and saw a tiny baby girl, fast asleep, with a small milk bottle tucked beside her. She was breathing softly, wrapped in a thin cloth. Zaid looked like he was about to cry. There was no one at home. "My Chachi didn't come last night. Mama is not home. If I stayed back, I'd miss school, so I brought her with me." "Since morning?" Miss Anaya asked, barely believing her ears. He nodded. "Yes, miss. I kept her quiet. I gave her milk when no one was looking." Tears welled up in Miss Anaya's eyes. She didn't know what to say. She had never imagined something like this. Zaid opened his lunchbox and showed her it was empty. "I gave her the bread this morning. I didn't want her to cry," he whispered. Miss Anaya felt her throat tighten. This was not just a shy student. This was a little boy trying to protect his baby sister. "Zaid," she said softly, "you did a brave thing, but this is serious. We need to talk to the principal. We need to help you." "No," he said suddenly. "Please, they'll take her away." His eyes were full of fear. He hugged the bag tightly. "She's all I have. I promised Mama I would take care of her." Miss Anaya gently touched his shoulder. "No one will hurt her. But we can't keep her in your bag, Zaid. It's not safe. We need to make sure she's okay. Can you trust me?" He looked at her for a long moment. Finally, slowly, he nodded. Miss Anaya stood up, holding the backpack with both hands. She looked calm, but her heart was racing. She walked quickly toward the principal's office, her mind spinning with questions. How did this happen? Where was Zaid's family? Why had no one noticed before? Behind her, Zaid followed, eyes low, hands shaking. As they reached the office, she gently handed the backpack to the principal. "Please open this carefully," she said, her voice barely steady. The principal frowned, confused, but did as she said. When he saw what was inside, he froze. The tiny baby, still asleep, made a small sigh and moved slightly. The room fell silent. Miss Anaya whispered, "We need help, now." The room was silent as the principal stared down at the tiny baby curled up inside the backpack. He didn't speak for a few seconds, then looked up at Miss Anaya, his voice low and serious. "Where did she come from? What is this?" Miss Anaya took a deep breath and placed a hand on Zaid's shoulder. "This is his sister, sir. He brought her to school because he had no one to watch her at home." Zaid stood quietly, his eyes fixed. On the floor, the principal leaned back in his chair, clearly shocked. Why didn't anyone know about this? "How long has this been going on?" Zaid looked up and spoke softly. "I only brought her today. I didn't want to, but I had no choice," Miss Anaya gently explained. "He said his aunt didn't come back last night, and his mother isn't at home. There was no one else." The principal rubbed his forehead, then looked at the baby again. "She needs medical attention. We can't keep her here. Call the nurse now." Miss Anaya quickly stepped out and brought the school nurse. The baby was lifted carefully out of the backpack and examined. She seems okay, just a little cold and hungry, the nurse said softly. Miss Anaya took Zaid aside and crouched in front of him. Zaid, tell me where your mother is. Is she at work or did something happen? Zaid hesitated, his voice shook. Mama got taken by the police a few weeks ago. She didn't do anything bad, but they came and took her. They said she was stealing, but she wasn't. His voice cracked. I saw her crying when they took her. They didn't even let her explain. The words hit Miss Anaya like a punch to the heart. And your father? She asked quietly. Zaid shook his head. He left last year and never came back. We waited, but he didn't call, didn't send money, nothing. So you're living with your aunt? Yes, but she doesn't stay home much. Sometimes she leaves for 2-3 days. I take care of my sister when she's gone. I feed her, I sing to her, I make her sleep. Miss Anaya couldn't hold her tears back anymore. You're just a child, Zaid. You shouldn't have to do this. She wiped her eyes and held his hands tightly. But you're brave and you're full of love. I promise, you're not alone anymore. The principal stepped out of the office, speaking on his phone. We need child services, he said. They'll decide what to do. Zaid heard that, and his body went stiff. He looked at Miss Anaya, his voice rising slightly. Please don't let them take her away. She's all I have. I promised Mama I would keep her safe. Please, miss, I'll do anything. I'll never bring her to school again. Just don't take her, Zaid. Please calm down, she said softly, holding his shoulders. We'll figure something out, okay, but we have to make sure she's safe and healthy. Just then the nurse returned after feeding the baby. She's better now, sleeping again, but she really needs warm clothes and care. She's very small. Zaid watched from the corner, his heart beating fast. Minutes later, 2 women entered the school office. One wore a badge and carried a folder. They were from Child Services. The taller woman looked around calmly. Who found the baby? The principal pointed to Miss Anaya and Zaid. She gently asked, Can you tell me what happened? Zaid repeated his story, tears filling his eyes again. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I just didn't want to leave her alone. The woman's expression softened. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. You tried to protect your sister. That's a good thing, but we have to make sure she's safe. Zaid took a deep breath. If you take her away, she'll cry all night. She doesn't sleep without me. She only stops crying when I sing to her. She knows my smell. I'm her brother. The shorter woman knelt beside him, gently touching his arm. We're not here to punish you, Zaid. We're just trying to understand. Can you tell us your full name and where you live? He told them everything. Clearly they nodded and noted it down. Miss Anaya watched as the women spoke quietly to the principal. She could see the decision being made and it broke her heart. One of the women finally turned to Zaid. For tonight, we'll take her to a temporary care home. Just until we talk to your family. We'll also visit your house tomorrow. Zaid's eyes went wide. No, please, miss. I'll be good. I'll stay home. I'll not come to school. Just don't take her. Miss Anaya knelt beside him. I know you're scared, Zaid, but they're not taking her forever. They're just helping for now. Zaid looked at his sister one last time. She was sleeping in the nurse's arms, unaware of everything. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered, I'll wait for you. I promise. He watched as they wrapped her in a soft blanket and walked out of the office, taking his whole world with them. After they were gone, the room felt heavy. Miss Anaya looked at Zaid sitting silently in the chair, his eyes blank, his hands gripping the edge of the table. She sat beside him. You can come home with me today if you want. You shouldn't be alone. But Zaid didn't respond. He stared at the door as if hoping his sister would return any second. Later that evening, Miss Anaya took Zaid to her home. She gave him warm food and a clean blanket. She tried to talk to him, but he barely spoke. He just kept holding a small cloth doll. The baby always slept with. The next morning, Zaid woke up Zaid sat beside his sister for as long as the staff allowed him. He watched her sleep and held her hand, gently humming the same lullaby he used to sing at home. It was the only way he knew to tell her he was still here. When the caretaker said time was up, Zaid didn't argue. He just gave the baby one last kiss on her forehead and whispered, I'll be back. On the way back to Miss Anaya's house, Zaid was quiet again. He stared out the car window, his face unreadable, but deep inside, a storm of fear and guilt raged. He kept wondering if he had done something wrong. Maybe if he hadn't brought her to school, she'd still be with him. Maybe he should have just stayed home that day. Miss Anaya glanced at him from the driver's seat. You did the right thing, Zaid, she said softly. You tried to protect your sister. You were just being a good brother. Zaid looked down at his hands. Then why did they take her away from me? She sighed. Because sometimes grown-ups don't know what else to do. But I promise, we're going to fix this. You won't be alone in this fight. That evening, Child Services visited Zaid's home. They found the house in bad condition. The aunt was not there. There was no food in the kitchen. The baby's crib was just a cardboard box with a small pillow. The officer took photos and wrote down everything. This boy was living like this. One officer whispered to the other. No wonder he brought the baby with him. He was doing better than the adults around him. Back at school, Miss Anaya was meeting with the principal and the school counselor. She had a plan. We need to do more than just watch this happen, she said firmly. Zaid is one of our students. We can't just leave him to the system. The principal sighed. I agree, but what can we really do? We can help. We can support him. We can raise funds. We can find a legal way to keep the siblings together. And if no one else steps up, I will, she said, her voice shaking slightly. The counselor looked surprised. You mean take them in? Miss Anaya nodded. I've lived alone for years. I have space. I have love. That boy needs a safe place, and that baby needs someone who won't give up on her." The principal looked at her with new respect. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "But I'm more sure about this than anything else I've done in my life." Meanwhile, Zaid was lying on a mattress at her house, staring at the ceiling. He had barely touched his dinner. His thoughts kept drifting to his mother. He wondered if she was okay, if she knew what had happened. He thought about the time they all used to laugh together when life was normal, the sound of her bangles, the way she used to call him Mera Shur. He missed her so much it hurt. He turned to the side and wiped his eyes quietly, not wanting Miss Anaya to hear. The next morning, he woke up before sunrise and sat in the living room, holding the doll again. When Miss Anaya walked in with a cup of tea, she found him wide awake. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. Zaid shook his head. "I was thinking, what if I never get her back?" She knelt beside him. "We're going to try. I talked to some people. If things go well, you both could be placed somewhere safe." Together he looked up, hopeful. "With you?" She paused, then smiled. "If that's what you want, and if the law agrees, then yes." Zaid didn't speak, but something in his eyes softened for the first time in days. That week, Miss Anaya took Zaid to the city's family court. A case had been opened to decide what would happen to both children. While they waited, Miss Anaya held Zaid's hand tightly. The judge listened carefully to all the reports, the police statement about the mother's arrest, the school report about Zaid's condition, the photos from his house. Then the judge looked at Zaid. "Young man, I want to ask you something," he said kindly. "If you could live anywhere, where would you feel safe?" Zaid didn't hesitate. "With my sister? That's all I want. Wherever she is, I want to be there." The judge nodded slowly. "And you, Miss Anaya, you're willing to foster both children?" "Yes," she replied confidently. "I've already started the paperwork. Do you have any family?" "No, sir, but I have space, and a heart that has room for them." After a long silence, the judge gave a small smile. "Until we get a final decision, the children can stay with Miss Anaya under temporary guardianship. Weekly checks will be done." Zaid felt like he could breathe again. That evening, he was taken back to the care center. When the baby saw him, she giggled loudly, arms reaching out. He ran to her, hugged her tight, and whispered, "We're going home." The staff helped them pack her a few things: a bottle, a blanket, a rattle toy. On the way back, both kids sat in the back seat. The baby dozed off in his arms. Zaid looked out the window, a small smile on his face. It wasn't perfect. His mother was still gone. His house was still broken. But for the first time in a long time, he felt safe. He felt seen. And he wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone anymore. He looked at Miss Anaya, who was quietly driving, and said, "Thank you for believing me when no one else did." She smiled back. "Thank you for being strong when most adults would break." As the car turned the last corner toward their new home, Zaid whispered one thing to himself. "I'm not scared anymore." And this time, he meant it. The days that followed felt like a new beginning for Zaid. Each morning he woke up to the sound of birds outside Miss Anaya's window, instead of the silence of an empty house. His sister, now sleeping in a proper crib with soft sheets, giggled more and cried less. It was the first time in a long while that Zaid felt like he could breathe. But healing was slow. At school, some students whispered behind his back. They had heard parts of the story and made strange faces when he walked by. He tried to ignore them, focusing only on his studies and his baby sister. Miss Anaya was always near, gently guiding him through each class and checking on him between lessons. One afternoon, during science class, a boy sitting beside him whispered, "Is it true you brought a baby in your bag?" Zaid didn't reply. He just stared ahead, pretending not to hear, but the words cut deep. After school, he walked slowly, holding the handle of the stroller with his sister inside. Miss Anaya had gotten it for them a few days earlier. It was secondhand, but to Zaid, it was perfect. At the market, some people smiled when they saw the boy pushing the stroller. Others looked confused. One woman even asked, "Where is the mother?" Zaid simply replied, "She'll be back soon," and kept walking. That night, as he fed his sister, he looked at her tiny face and whispered, "Don't worry, I won't let anyone make fun of us. We're a team, remember?" She responded with a soft coo, and Zaid smiled for the first time that day. Meanwhile, Miss Anaya was busy filing more paperwork. She had spoken to a lawyer who volunteered to help with Zaid's case. Together, they were trying to locate his mother, who was still in custody, awaiting a court date. The charges against her were unclear. Some neighbors had accused her of stealing baby formula from a local shop, but she had claimed it was a misunderstanding. The shop owner had no proof, and no security footage. The lawyer believed she could be released soon. But the system was slow, and Zaid didn't know how long he would have to wait. One evening, Zaid asked, "Miss, can we visit Mama?" Miss Anaya nodded. "We're working on it, I promise. As soon as it's allowed, I'll take you." Zaid didn't ask again, but he counted the days silently. Every night before bed, he placed a small toy beside his sister's crib and said, "This is from Mama. She's thinking of you." On Sunday morning, Miss Anaya surprised him. "Get dressed," she said with a smile. We're going somewhere special. Zaid's heart raced. Where you'll see, she replied. They drove for almost an hour, and finally stopped. In front of a tall building with gray walls and a large gate, Zaid recognized it immediately. It was the Women's Holding Center. His chest tightened. Are we really going to see her? He asked. Miss Anaya nodded. Just for a short time? Be strong, okay? Inside, after a long wait and strict checking, Zaid was allowed into a small room with 2 chairs and a glass wall. Moments later, a guard led a tired-looking woman to the other side of the glass. It was his mother. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. She rushed to the chair, pressed her hand against the glass, and whispered, Zaid, Mary Jan. Tears filled his eyes. He placed his hand on the glass, trying to smile. Mama, I brought her to school. I had to, but she's okay now. We're okay, she cried softly, nodding. I'm so proud of you. You took care of her. You kept my promise. We're staying with my teacher, he said. She's helping us. She says you might come home soon. His mother's face softened. I hope so, Beta. I pray every night. Just keep being strong. Their time ended too quickly. As he left the room, Zaid kept looking back, holding onto her face in his memory. On the way home, he didn't speak. He just held his sister's tiny hand and looked out the window. That night, he wrote in a notebook Miss Anaya had given him. He wrote about the visit. He drew a picture of his mother behind glass, smiling. He called the page Hope. At school, things began to change. A few students who once whispered began to smile at him instead. One even helped him carry his books. When the story reached the school newsletter, many parents and students donated baby clothes, diapers, and toys. Zaid was surprised by the kindness. He had never expected help from people he didn't even know, but not everyone was kind. One afternoon, an older student blocked his way in the hallway. So you're the baby boy now? The boy mocked, carrying bottles and dolls. Zaid sat on the floor of their small apartment, surrounded by boxers. The air smelled like fresh paint and new hope. It had taken weeks, but they had finally moved into their own home. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom, but to Zaid, it felt like a palace. He watched his mother hang up a family photo on the wall. It was one they had taken at the school gallery, all 3 of them smiling. His baby sister was in his arms, her eyes wide and curious. Every time he looked at that photo, his heart swelled. With pride, that evening they cooked their first meal together in the new kitchen. His mother chopped vegetables while Zaid stirred the pot. The baby sat in a high chair, banging a spoon on the table. It was noisy and a little messy, but it was theirs. After dinner, Zaid helped wash the dishes while his mother put the baby to sleep. He looked out of the small window above the sink and whispered a silent thank you to the stars. He remembered the nights he cried, alone in the dark, wondering if things would ever get better. Now he had proof that they could. The next day at school, Zaid's teacher announced a story writing contest. The topic was a moment that changed my life. As soon as he heard it, Zaid knew exactly what he wanted to write. He sat down that evening with his notebook, took a deep breath, and began. He wrote about the day he had brought his baby sister to school. He wrote about fear, courage, and kindness. He described the glass wall that separated him from his mother, and the arms that brought them back together. He didn't use big words or fancy sentences. He just told the truth. When he finished, he handed the notebook to Miss Anaya, who had stopped by to check on them. She read silently, her eyes moving slowly across the page. When she reached the end, she looked up with tears in her eyes. This is more than just a story. It's a gift. Zaid smiled shyly. Do you think I'll win? You already have, she replied. A week later, the winners were announced during school assembly. Zaid sat quietly, not expecting much. When the principal called his name as the first place winner, he froze for a moment, unsure if he had heard correctly. The applause brought him back to life. He stood, walked to the stage, and received a small trophy and a certificate. As he turned to face the crowd, the principal asked, "Would you like to say something?" Zaid hesitated, then stepped up to the microphone. "I just want to say thank you," he said, "not just for this prize, but for listening to my story. I used to think no one cared, but now I know people do. So if anyone else is going through something hard, please don't give up. There's always someone out there who will help you. You just have to keep believing." The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Zaid looked out and saw his mother in the back, holding his sister and smiling through tears. That night, they celebrated with sweet rice and laughter. His mother hugged him tightly. "I wish your father could see you now," she said softly. Zaid didn't say anything. He had long stopped waiting for his father to come back, but he didn't feel bitter. He had already found the love and strength he needed. Later that week, something unexpected happened. The same local reporter who had written about Zaid's artwork came back, this time wanting to write a follow-up. About the contest, she interviewed Zaid again, took pictures of the apartment, and even recorded a short video. When the article was published online, it went viral. Strangers from different cities started sending messages, donations, and letters of encouragement. One man wrote, "Your story helped me talk to my son again after 5 years." A woman shared, "I was going to give up on my dreams. Your words reminded me not to." Zaid was amazed. I didn't know writing could do this. He told Miss Anaya, stories change people, she said, and your story is doing that. With all the attention, a local charity offered his mother a full-time job managing inventory at their office. It paid better, and came with health benefits. She accepted the offer with tears in her eyes. It's all because of you, she told Zaid. You carried us through the worst days. Now let me carry some of the weight. Things were looking up in every direction. Zaid joined a weekend reading group at the library, where he met other kids who loved stories. He started writing more often, even helping other students with their essays. His favorite thing was sitting by the window, writing while his sister napped beside him. One day, while cleaning their apartment, his mother found something tucked away behind an old photo frame. It was a drawing Zaid had made a year ago, stick figures of him, his sister, and his mother, standing in front of a house with the words, "Someday" written at the bottom. She brought it to him and said, "Think your someday is today." Zaid smiled and taped the picture to the front door. "Now it's real," he said. That night, as the rain gently tapped on the roof and the baby slept soundly, Zaid sat in bed writing one last line in his notebook. Sometimes, the smallest step can lead to the biggest change. He closed the notebook and turned off the light, his heart full and his mind at peace. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet neighborhood, casting a soft glow into Zaid's room. He woke up with a smile already on his face. It was a special day, 1 year since everything had changed. 1 year since the day he brought his baby sister to school in a backpack. 1 year since fear turned into hope. He stretched, got out of bed, and tiptoed into the kitchen. His mother was already up, packing his lunch and humming softly to herself. The smell of paratha filled the small apartment, and Zaid's stomach growled. "Morning, Mama," he said with a yawn. She turned and kissed his forehead. "Morning, hero, big day today." He nodded. "Yeah, the school asked me to speak at the assembly." "I'm proud of you," she said. "I was proud of you even before all this, but now the whole world gets to see the light I always saw." His baby sister crawled into the kitchen, holding her favorite stuffed toy. Zaid picked her up and spun her around, making her laugh. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "You're the reason I became brave." After breakfast, they walked together to school. It was warm outside, and the sky was clear. Zaid held his sister's hand while his mother walked beside them, her eyes filled with peace. When they reached the school gate, some students waved. At him, teachers smiled as he passed by. Zaid was no longer the quiet boy with sad eyes. He was the boy who wrote his pain into power. The principal greeted him at the door of the auditorium. "Are you ready, Zaid?" he asked. Zaid took a deep breath. "Yes, sir." Inside, the seats were full. Students, teachers, and even some local reporters had come. The stage lights were bright, and the microphone waited for him at the center. When his name was called, the room fell silent. Zaid walked up slowly, his heart beating fast but steady. He looked at the crowd and began. "A year ago, I was scared. I didn't know who to trust. I was just a kid with a baby sister and no one to help. But something amazing happened. Someone believed in me. My teacher didn't ask me to explain or prove anything. She just saw me. She helped me when I couldn't help myself." He paused, his eyes searching for Miss Anaya in the crowd. She sat in the second row, smiling with pride. "And because of her, I started to believe in myself too. I learned that no matter how small you feel, your voice matters. Your story matters." The crowd stayed quiet, listening closely. "We all go through things," Zaid continued. "Some of us lose people. Some of us have to grow up too fast. But I want to tell you this: your story doesn't end in sadness. It begins there, but it grows. It becomes stronger. And one day, you'll look back and realize that every hard day was shaping you into something brave." He ended with a soft thank you, and stepped back. The room exploded with applause. People stood, clapping louder than ever before. His mother wiped her tears. Miss Anaya's hands were shaking as she clapped, overwhelmed with emotion. After the assembly, people came up to shake Zaid's hand, ask for pictures, and congratulate him. He handled it all with quiet grace, still the same humble boy inside. The reporter who had written his earlier story returned with a photographer. "Zaid, we'd like to feature you in a national article this time. Your story is inspiring children all over the country." Zaid smiled. "Only if I can mention the people who helped me. I didn't do this alone." That evening they celebrated. At home, Miss Anaya joined them for dinner, bringing a chocolate cake. Zaid's mother lit a single candle and placed it in the center. "This candle is for the light you brought into all our lives," she said. Zaid closed his eyes, made a wish, and blew it out. After dinner, they all sat together and looked through an old photo album Miss Anaya had made for them. It had pictures from the day his mother was released, their first night in the new apartment, the art gallery show, and even Zaid's award speech. Each photo was a chapter in their journey. "I never thought I'd see these kinds of days," his mother whispered. "I thought our story would end in silence." "It didn't," Miss Anaya said, "because Zaid gave it a voice." Zaid sat quietly, holding his sister in his lap as she slowly drifted to sleep. He looked at the people around him, his mother, his teacher, his small but complete family, and felt a warmth he couldn't describe. Later that night, he sat at his desk, writing in his journal. He wrote about the assembly, the applause, the smiles, the joy, but then he turned the page and wrote something new. Now that our story is known, I want to help others tell theirs. He didn't know how, but he was sure of it.